Welcome to Synced on Air. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have Leslie Halleck. Welcome, Leslie. I'm so glad to have you. And want to talk more about this new course that you're offering. So much to talk about, but let's just dive in and get a little summary of your background, a short summary if you can.
Yeah, great. So first off, great to virtually meet you. So happy to be here. Love to talk all things horticulture and education and plants, you name it. So any chance I get to just talk about this stuff is great. So yeah, we're going to talk about the business of horticulture, which is a course I built, and I have a companion course to that. But so my career in horticulture is long and varied. I won't go into all of the details because it would take a lot of time, but I'll just say I call myself an everythingist, and I'm not a one lane kind of gal. I like to do a lot of different things. And I think if you look at my career over time, you'll see I've basically kind of driven in almost every lane you can in the industry. So I actually started out as an art student. I was going to be an artist my whole life, which blends perfectly, with
It
horticulture
does.
and
It
landscape
does.
design. So it very much makes sense. Spent a couple of years as an art major at an art school at university. And then, that plant bug just kind of kicked in. I had been surrounded by gardeners and plant women my whole life, and it just sort of germinated when I was about 18. And so I
Pun
changed my
included,
major. Yes.
intended. Yeah.
Yes. Pun intended. Changed my major to botany, finished my undergrad with a botany degree, went back to grad school at Michigan State for a master's degree in horticulture and floriculture, greenhouse production. But also spent time doing a lot of botanical field research and ecology research before doing that, before deciding that I wanted to take that plant science focus and knowledge and blend it with applied horticulture and the artsy side of horticulture.
Okay.
Which that's what horticulture is. It's the art and science of cultivating
It is.
plants. So I really did both. I got my science degrees. I have my artsy fartsy training, and I blend that together. So I've worked in plant research, botanical gardens, lots of time in garden center retail, landscape design, build, kind of you name it. I run the gamut. And after 20 or so years of working in all these kinds of businesses, both academic, educational, and commercial, I figured out what I was good at. I figured out what I was really good at, which is understanding what the gardening and horticulture consumer really wants, how to communicate with them
Hmm.
to make a business profitable, right? So
Which is a huge issue in our industry.
it's a
So,
it's a huge
yeah.
issue. I mean, planty people don't always like to focus on profits. It feels a little icky sometimes. On the flip side of that, you have a lot of landscape design build companies that maybe don't kind of focus enough on the artsy fartsy communication, customer side of things, and, are really focused on operations, but maybe don't bring as much of the humanity into their business. So you kind of have the flip side of both of those conundrums, if you will. So yeah, so basically I keep one foot in the consumerism of horticulture. So I write books for consumers, plant and gardening education books for consumers. I write blog content for consumers. And then about 13 years ago, after figuring out what I was good at, decided, hey, I mean, I have a problem with authority anyway. I need to just work for myself and outsource myself, to companies to do what they're not great at doing in this industry, which
Yes,
is marketing,
the
communications,
business.
and kind of focusing on profit building activities from that human perspective, from that human communication. So I call myself a horticultural translator, if you will. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, so I've spent the last 13 years running Halleck Horticultural. Most of my work is B2B, consulting for companies in the great industry, lots of landscape design build firms, landscape architects, greenhouse growers, garden centers, you name it. And started teaching for UCLA Extension about 5 years ago when the pandemic hit and a lot of
Okay.
education had to go online.
Yeah.
And so everybody was scrambling to figure out how do we teach, and they were looking for some new courses. So they hit me up to build and teach an indoor plants care and maintenance, which is an 11-week intensive. So it's really built for those in the industry who want to learn the science of plants indoors. And from there, expanded my offerings. I built and teach a botany course, which is great for a lot of landscape design students and LA students who maybe don't get
Okay.
as much plant-centric education. So I have a lot of students in
Many
that class.
people say they need
Yes.
more. of the
Yes, so
plant
my botany course,
education.
so I teach indoor plants, care maintenance, botany, and then a few years ago, because we were seeing partially post because of the pandemic and the big plant boom and gardening boom interest of the pandemic, but also with the challenges in education, a lot more people turning to vocational education opportunities and continuing education. A lot of people looking to transition careers, but not able to go back to a full degree program. Fewer and fewer two-year associates horticulture and landscape design degrees offered at community
A
colleges
lot
around the
fewer,
country.
a lot
Those
fewer.
have diminished significantly. And the industry's done kind of a bad job of marketing itself to new people coming in the industry. You know, we'd have a low perception of value in terms of earnings and ROI. So not as many
We
people
do.
going into degree programs. What's happened is vocational training and extension continuation certificate training started to boom. And so they hit me up about business. They said, "Hey, we don't have anybody else that can do this. There really aren't any other courses like this. Would you be interested in teaching business courses?" And that was what led me to build and teach both the business of horticulture and its companion course, the business of selling plants.
Okay.
Long road, do lots of stuff,
Fantastic,
but
though.
yeah, in a nutshell.
Well, we don't I think we don't value ourselves enough, our design time. We give designs away for free.
Yep. Yep.
All this stuff. I know many landscape designers that couldn't support a family on what they're doing. It's only supplemental income, and, that's it's our own issue,
Yeah, of
and
course.
we need to project the right image. I think that, yeah, any education in the business sense is so valuable.
That's exactly why I built the course. So, as I was teaching students in more of the plant focused horticulture space, more and more of them coming to the course to do the horticulture certification wanted to have a business, wanted to start a business, and I call them plantrepreneurs. And so I shifted a lot of my consulting business actually over to working with a lot of individual people looking to start a business or change careers
Mhm.
or have an existing, but look, like you said, there's a lot of struggling businesses in the industry. So I get students who are seasoned business owners, who've had their own business 20, 30 years, but they're just not seeing the growth or profits they need and they can't figure out why. So I decided there's just no one teaching this to anybody. There's no one teaching people how to navigate the landscape and horticulture industry from within, how to actually set up a business successfully and really understand specific targeted customer relations and communication and marketing, right? People don't really understand how to manage their bottom line. They don't really understand pricing of services and plants. And because there is a low perception of value, which we have created and perpetuated, everybody struggles. So I spend a lot of time in both courses focused on perception of value. That's what I spend most of my time with clients. That's what I teach a lot about is how to actually value yourself and what you do enough. I don't know about you as a horticulturist. I'm everybody's plant person that they know. There's not a lot of us. So, over the years, our phones, our emails, our social media channels are blown up with 5 million plant questions from everybody we know all the time, expecting us to do this work for free for them.
Yes.
I am a refuser. And I say,
Yes.
"No, I
Say
will
no.
not do this." And it's so interesting how ruffled people get when you say, "Well, look, I don't have time to answer all of your plant questions for free. This is my living." Well, it's just plant questions. And my answer to that is, "Well, if you need the information so badly and you don't have it and I do, well, that sounds like supply and demand to me." And I think a lot of people in the plant world, maybe less so on kind of hardcore just landscape installation side, but on more plant focused side, I think people are typically want to feel generous. They want to be generous. They want to be perceived as nice, especially women struggle with,
Especially women. Yeah.
yes, being perceived as not nice. If we say no, or if we say this is our price, I'm sorry, I can't come off of that. There are penalties for that. Right. And so a lot of it is learning how to set boundaries, understanding how to value your time as a professional,
Yes.
and to learn how to command it in the marketplace by delivering real value, right,
Yes.
with firm boundaries. And that's really tough for people.
It is, but I think having a framework to go from helps you be stronger and learning, teaching it more, this course, other people that have stopped giving things away for free, learn from everyone around you that's doing it well.
Yeah, but I think there has to be sort of a collective agreement there, and I don't think we've quite
Yes.
gotten there with the
No, we
industry.
haven't.
And the industry is so very, ideal. So so the programs I teach through UCLA Extension. They're online. Anybody can register. They're not limited to
Okay.
matriculating UCLA students. I'm also working on expanding opportunities to take some of my courses and additional things directly from me. So that's in the works. I'm in the works
Okay,
because I
good.
know not everybody is interested in getting UCLA credits or CEUs or being part of the actual certificate program. But certificate programs are great if you don't have a degree and you're looking for a way to transition into the industry. That's a tool, but not everybody wants that. So it is really interesting. I do get quite a few landscape designers or aspiring landscape designers and landscape architects in all of my classes, both because they need more plant education that they haven't gotten elsewhere and because there literally is no one teaching them how to run a business like this. Even if you were to be a part of a degree program, like say an LA or horticulture degree program, you're not getting much meaningful business education.
No, and I think that it's because the traditional route is to work for a firm.
Correct.
And, we've Synced has only been on the go for a few years, but we've interviewed a lot of young landscape architects that are very frustrated with this
Yes.
model
Yes.
because they say, well, we have to sit in a corner and in front of a computer every day and we can deliver a lot more value, but they say that's the route to get there and we're not happy with that. So,
Yeah, for LA's, yeah. So for each different type of discipline, and that's part of the struggle is the industry is so varied. Whilst it's incestuous and we all work together, the disciplines are very different. The difference
yeah,
between a horticulturist and a landscape designer and a landscape architect are very different. And that's part of the struggle we have is that the public and consumers don't understand what those distinctions are, right? Because we don't do a terribly good job of marketing ourselves.
educating.
I spend a lot of time doing that, right? So, I think, sort of your best combo is a horticulturist and a landscape architect. That's sort of the marriage that I think needs to happen more in the industry that doesn't, because I think that there's a lot of expectations put on LAs that isn't realistic based on their education and background, what they are not given. Same for horticulturists. I'm not doing drafting classes. I'm not, doing any
Exactly.
of that and vice versa. They're really not spending a lot of time on any plant education. And both of those things are important, right? But yeah, they have to work for 7 years for a firm for licensure, right? Or you have to have a degree to get you there faster, right? And I think fewer and fewer people are choosing the degree path. More and more people want to come into the industry as transitioners or without a degree. And yeah, it's a
Or be
longer
more
path.
hands on, in the
Right.
design and build, and which I get excited about because again, you know, there's all these silos in our industry.
Yes. Yes,
And you
exactly.
can, you said horticulturists to landscape architects. And then I've had some business owners go, well, the biggest disconnect is between installation and maintenance. And everybody has their own, like, this is the problem.
Well, they're all problems. I've run maintenance divisions for landscaping before. Like, so, I mean, I completely, I've done design, I've done installation, I do maintenance, I've done all of these things. I've done retail. And so that's for me, not everybody gets this comprehensive
View or perspective. Yeah.
road traveled in their career. I've had the opportunity to sort of get a holistic view from the plant research, right? From the
Okay.
plant science, from the foundational plant science and ecology, which is very important to landscapers and designers in LAs, by the way. But it needs to be a lot more important, especially these days when we're talking about sustainable
Yes.
design and ecosystems. Really is got to be part of design and landscape architecture. So from the science to, the public facing public gardens, plant trials, to landscape design, build, installation, to retail, to writing for consumers, right? When you get to experience all of those lanes, I think it helps clarify the positives of how everybody fits into the puzzle and works together. But within the industry, there's very much a disconnect from all of those, avenues, if you will.
Specialties.
So it's
Yeah.
hard for everyone to see everyone else's perspective, which is part of why marketing in the green industry to the consumer is so challenging for everybody. It's about creating the big picture and explaining to somebody what they're going to get from you and why. And I think that that's tough for a lot of people to do. But so we address that a lot in the courses. I do have a
Good.
lot of frustrated students, and they're trying to figure out how to move along faster. One of the things we do is I expose them to all of the different areas, within the green industry and horticulture and landscape, and where can they get experience? Where can they, for a lot of LAs and designers, I'm often going to recommend specific work experience that they would probably never think of doing because it's not in that one lane track that
Yes.
LAs follow or the designers follow. But versatility is incredibly valuable in this
Hmm.
industry, and being able to both have a really good solid foundation of plant knowledge with design skills is a differentiator. And that's what a
It
lot
is.
of students or young people, they don't really understand that or understand how to go about doing that.
Oh, and the other thing is, what I think is powerful is you're taking whatever 20 years of experience, condensing that
Oh,
and
I'm so gonna take that
showing.
as a compliment that I'm way younger than I am. Sure, 20 years, we'll go with that. I think I'm at about 35 years now,
Well,
but that's
okay,
okay.
20, 20. But, you can't they're chomping at the bit to get started,
Yes,
and you don't know what you don't know until it gets exposed to you.
exactly. I say that in my
So
classes all the time, that you don't know what you don't know until you start the learning journey, and then all of a sudden you realize, "Oh my gosh, there's so much that I don't know," and there's so
and
much.
that should be exciting. It should
Exactly.
be invigorating, and it should, and I yeah, I it should help them craft a career that they're suited for and they don't have blinders on.
Right, and a lot of that frustration translates into people wanting to start their own businesses, and that's where, but they
So
just
you're
don't know how to
getting all of
clarify a
them.
bit. Right, and
Yeah.
so that's what I'm also helping a lot of people do, but I also have quite a few career transitioners who are looking for a job in my classes, so we focus on them
Okay.
too.
Okay.
So I've built the course kind of to have multiple target customers, if you will, those who
Okay.
are trying to decide if they want to pursue a career change or degree program, those who want to start a business from scratch, those who maybe already have a business but are struggling. So I do a lot of, I call myself the fixer and the flipper. So I usually get businesses when they're in bad shape. And then I turn them around, and that's what we do. So I run the gamut of all of those people in both my classes and my personal consulting and coaching.
Okay.
So I work with all of those folks, and I work with landscape designers and tree care companies and landscape architects and plant shops and garden centers, right? Because I've worked in all of them. So,
Yeah.
but and that's the perspective that's tough to get for a lot of these folks coming in. Like you said, they just don't know what they don't know. They have no idea how these businesses operate. They don't know how they interconnect within the industry. They don't understand perception of value of those products and services by the customer, and they also don't understand that it's their job to create and shift that perspective of value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't blame it on anybody else except for ourselves and doing it one client at a time, one friend at a time as
Mhm.
well. I can't tell you
Mhm.
how many friends thought when I say I'm in landscaping, they think I mow people's lawns and,
Exactly, and it's so interesting, yet, you look, I have multiple degrees. Like I said, I've been doing this for 35 years. It is a massive accumulation of knowledge and information that is required in the context of professional work to be able to deliver. And I think that's another challenge I see with a lot of career transitioners or young people trying to progress their career is they don't yet quite have an appreciation that this is a science. We work in a science-based industry, and that requires time put in to acquire knowledge, and it requires time put in to get hands-on experience.
Yes.
I often encounter folks that maybe are in, maybe say they're a graphic designer or they're some other type of spatial designer or something else and they want or something completely unrelated and they want to become a garden designer or a landscape architect, but they immediately want to start charging the same rates that they have been charging as a seasoned professional in their previous industry. And it's often a very tough thing for them to understand when I have to say, look, you don't have a degree, you don't have any plant related degrees, you don't have a degree in design or landscape architecture yet. You don't have any hands-on experience. You may have been a great ABC, but you don't yet have the knowledge or credentials or experience to be able to sell yourself at the level of someone who's been doing it for 30 years. That's a tough pill to swallow. Because of that low perception of value, people assume it's easy. They assume, well, I like gardening. And that's the same thing, right? I'm a home gardener. It's so not the same
So
thing.
different.
It's
So
so not the
different.
same thing. I also combat a lot
It's
of
not
people.
pretty pictures if it doesn't
No.
work. And I think that is a living it's a living thing. You have to keep these things alive. And if one plant has different needs from the plants around it, that will never work. And yeah,
Yeah, and there's so
sorry.
many, as you well know, there's so many variables. You have soil composition, soil structure, you have climate, you have microclimates, you have, you name it. The list goes
Yeah.
on and on and on. And unless you
It's a challenge.
understand the chemistry and the plant physiology, and you have some experience, not only choosing those plants for landscape design, but maintaining them, seeing how they perform over a number of years to understand what did or didn't work in that particular situation. And you just can't get to that by being a home gardener. It's not the same thing. I get a lot of folks who conflate being a master gardener volunteer with being a professional in the industry. Also, apples and oranges, not the same thing at all. Master gardeners are, it's not a professional designation, it's a volunteer program. And so a lot of people mistakenly think, oh, if I go through a master gardener program, then I can professionally sell gardening services. No, you can't. That violates master gardener program rules and a slew of other things, right? You can't use
That's
that.
right.
And so I'm also educating people on the differences between what is real higher education or advanced training in professional
Professional
horticulture and
sense.
landscape design versus home gardening or community gardening volunteer work. They're very
Yes.
different things with very different stakes and responsibilities.
Yeah. That is that's a great point. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody about that, but yeah, like people say, "You should join the Master Gardening Association for," like, "Oh, you're in landscaping. Oh, you should join this." I'm like,
Yeah, no, it's
"Well,
the
it's
opposite.
not really."
No, that master word in the master gardener title is a misnomer. It's misleading to a lot of people. It's not professional training and it's not a professional designation, nor are they allowed to use it as a professional designation or to sell services. But there again, the public doesn't understand that. They don't understand the differences there. So it's very important, you know,
That
gardening in
we
your home.
know as an
Yes.
industry,
Yes,
and
but
we
we have
say,
right. If you want to get involved in your community and you want to volunteer time and you love gardening and you want gardening and gardening education to be the way you volunteer, the Master Gardener program is awesome. If you have career goals or want to start a business, then I'm going to say you need to be in a higher education program or at a minimum a certificate program, like say at the extension level where you're going to get advanced
yes.
education. So they're just two very different pathways, but so many people coming in the industry do not know that.
Well, let's talk. I mean, this is fascinating. I think we might have to have some more
Sure.
podcasts. But let's dive into what students, because your course is starting again soon. Is that right? Is it starting in September?
Yes, the business of horticulture. So this is a 6 weeks online course. It's asynchronous, but I do weekly optional office hours. So it's very flexible for people who are working,
Okay. Oh,
which is,
good.
I know, a big challenge for people. So that starts up on the 3rd of September 2025. That'll run 6 weeks. So that's open for registration right now. Folks can join that right now.
And so that is geared towards professionals and people that want to start their own businesses. And you did
Career
mention a few different, yeah, go ahead and
Yeah,
mention
career
again.
transitioners. I call them hort curious. If you're hort
Or
curious
curious?
and you don't
Okay,
really
good.
understand the industry, landscape design curious, LA curious, and you don't really know what you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what the options are, and you're
Hmm.
looking at a career change. This course is for you. If you have a vision for a business, don't know how to clarify it, are trying to start a business, this course is perfect for you. If you're an existing business owner in the industry and you are struggling in any way to sort of wrap your head around how to move your business forward, this course is also for you.
Awesome. So, what will they take away at the end of the 6 weeks? Can you
So, yeah, I
summarize
give
that?
you my little list. So, I broke out the 6 weeks into, so the first week is called Discover. So, this is where we introduce sort of the horticulture industry, all the different arms, leg, fingers, toes, options, opportunities, things you might not think about in the industry, a lot of career resources. And then I have a course project with 3 different pathways people can take that I introduce that week to get people thinking about, okay, do I want to write a business plan? And we teach you how to do that. Do I want to create a career change action plan? You can do that.
Okay.
If you're an existing business facing specific challenges, maybe HR challenges or marketing challenges, we can work on a strategy or action plan for that. So that first week, we discover. The second week, I call strategize. So this is where we start planning for profits. So really start talking about how to structure things, both on a career side
Hmm.
because when I was looking to get my master's degree, I did a market analysis. I did a market and salary analysis to decide whether it was worth it for me to pay for a master's degree, which it was, right?
Exactly.
Nobody does that, right? But I did that. And then I did the same thing with my PhD. I actually turned down the PhD slot that was offered to me because with my market analysis, I was like, I can make
It's
the
not going
same,
to
if not more
matter.
money with my master's degree without being in school 5 more years and then doing another 6-year postdoc. That's not what I wanted to do. But unless you know that's what's ahead of you and you analyze that, you can't make good choices. So we talk about defining visions and goals. We start talking about financials, how to plan for financials, licensing, legal stuff, right? So we get into the business stuff. The third week I call articulate. So that's your vision, voice, and messaging. So we start talking about branding and company identity and marketing, right? And that can be for you as a personal professional because you are a brand, or it
Yes.
can be for a company. And then fourth week, we get into earnings, earn what you're worth. So we start talking about that perception of value and how to price products and services. Like I get into the nitty gritty, how to get paid, cash flow, how to handle invoicing, how to handle slow pay customers, like all that stuff that we
Fantastic.
all deal with, right?
Yeah.
Client relationships, things, all sorts of things like that. Week 5, I call grow your team. So then we get into kind of HR or recruiting or how to hire a subcontractor or how to, right? So, because a lot of people in
Yes.
landscape design in LA, they start out by themselves and developing relationships with subcontractor installers is usually the way to go, but
It's
nobody
huge.
realized, yeah, they don't. So we get into that and company culture and then 6th week, I call manifest. So the 6th week is manifesting, is putting everything together in your project, your business plan or your action plan. We do course project review. You have a little final exam, all that good stuff. So basically, it's a 6-week path of coming up with a vision or taking a vision that you have and actually putting it into tangible action.
That's fantastic. That's so practical. And then you leave the course with your plan
Yeah,
after
or a
it's been,
draft. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
perfect or finished, but now you have, oh, I know what my business is going to look like now. Or I know how I'm going to change my business, or oh, there's all these career opportunities or shifts that I can make that I didn't even know were possible for me. It essentially takes a lot of the fear and unknown out of all of these processes for people. That otherwise, unless you physically spent 30 years having to learn on your feet, no, there's no way to know until you have to suffer all of the bad decisions and mistakes and, not knowing you needed that license or whatever it is, right? You stumble through. So I've tried to make it so that people have as much of that knowledge up front as they can before they start.
what have you noticed? It's interesting that you started this, you said 5 years ago. So through the COVID ups and downs and everything, what have you noticed has enrollment changed more with the industry changes? What have you seen over the last 5 years?
Yeah, sure. Certainly when we were in it, when we were in the pandemic, obviously there was a huge surge in houseplants, indoor growing, right? And there were a lot of new plant shops opening. Like there was a lot of that started. A lot of people were doing more gardening. So garden centers were doing really well. But I also knew just from my experience that was going to contract as soon as we sort of came out of that 2-3 years. I knew what was going to happen is that a lot of those businesses were going to close. A lot of the big growth that a lot of industry companies saw was going to shrink
Go
because they weren't
away.
doing anything differently than they were before the pandemic. They were just riding those pandemic profits. And sure enough, that's
Pandemic.
exactly what happened, right? We've had an increase in enrollment continuously. And I would say that I've seen a big shift during the pandemic, let's say with 2020, 21, 22. I had a lot more home gardeners and individual plant enthusiasts in, say, indoor plants and botany, right? And then it started to shift to more and more people pursuing the actual certificate for professional purposes or
Okay.
wanting to start a business. It's shifted almost to completely that type of enrollment. I maybe might have one or two hobbyists that are just interested, but even they will admit there's a little bit of a seed in them that thinks they could maybe want to do this as a job or as a business. And so as I stated earlier, there's been a big increase in enrollment with, I think, a lot of extension programs, certificates specifically,
Hmm.
and a lot more people with professional aspirations. So I've definitely seen a big uptick in people wanting to get into landscape design, landscape architecture. A lot of people, of course, plant shops, plant retail. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
that. So yeah, it's been an interesting shift, which I only developed the business courses last year. So the business of horticulture only debuted in 2024
Okay. Yeah.
because of that demand,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the shift in enrollment, and the department was getting requests for horticulture business coursework that they didn't have because there's nowhere else to get it. So it's been an interesting shift. So there's a lot of an increase in entrepreneurship, but also a big increase in people wanting to shift their careers over into the green industry.
That's so exciting. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it's been a second career. Excuse me. And I know a lot of people that it's a second career for the love of what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think businesses in the industry need to pay attention to that because
Hmm.
from a recruiting standpoint, we'd been in a pretty good slump, and I think, we all have labor challenges obviously in this industry, which we may be seeing more of now. And recruiting has been tough, and so I think what you were talking about earlier, LA professionals getting kind of frustrated because of the path they have to take. I think that more and more businesses are going to have to look at transitioners or people with certificates that are willing to get a lot more hands-on experience. There may be fewer degreed horticulturists or degreed landscape architects. They kind of have to look at the changing landscape of education right now
Yes.
and look at, okay, how do we provide more in-house training or opportunities for hands-on experience to supplement that knowledge, which I think would assuage a lot of the frustration that some of your younger LAs have expressed that they have.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and I also feel like what we talked about earlier, having all these silos and specialties. Maybe we need to cross pollinate a bit more and get some variety of experience because maybe they aren't meant for you know
Right.
this role, this
One lane.
traditional role, but they just don't know any other way.
Exactly, and I find that's what happens when I get some of those students say they're in the landscape architecture certificate because UCLA's there's different certificate programs around the country. UCLA specifically has a horticulture certificate and a landscape architecture certificate. They're not certifications, they are certificates, right? They're educate continuing education. And I'm very clear with my students that they are not becoming a certified landscape architect by doing a 2-year certificate in LA, right? That's
Yeah.
another thing people don't understand. So we have to teach that too. But they will take my in-depth indoor plants care and maintenance, which is really It's very science heavy, so it's geared towards plantscapers, interiorscapers, people who are really looking to do this intensively, and they learn a lot of plant science, or they take my botany class and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't have any plant education or knowledge. I didn't understand any of this, and all of a sudden I'm way more interested in this." But they were never really exposed to it at the depth that they get into with me
In
in the
your
plant
course.
classes
Yeah,
because it wasn't part of their training or curriculum or whatever. Some of them have degrees in landscape architecture, right? But maybe they don't have the experience and they're coming to take more classes to supplement their education. So I'm getting a lot of those kinds of students. So you don't know what you don't know until you start that learning journey. And I'm finding a lot of landscape designers in LAs are really getting excited by learning more plant science and applied horticultural information, which I think just makes them far more versatile.
yeah, yeah. It does. And I was just at a Louisiana Ladies of Landscape Architecture group meeting,
That's a
and
mouthful.
I know. I was like, "Am I going to say this right or in the right order?" And we went around the table and saying, what do people want more information on? And almost half the group were, I want more horticulture knowledge and
Exactly.
background, and so
Right. An
it's
interesting
definitely
option
a
for
gap.
yeah, an interesting option for LAs or those in landscape is to maybe, and people may not think about this, but do a continuing education certificate in horticulture. You don't have to go
Yeah.
back to school for another degree or another
Yeah.
but you could do a horticulture certificate through a reputable program to
Mhm.
supplement your current experience and degrees and gain a whole bunch of knowledge that you didn't have. So I think people in the industry need to not only admit they all need continuing education all the time. I think intellectual curiosity is the stuff. It's what fuels anybody who's really good at what they do. I am a lifelong perpetual student. I am always taking a class in something, and I'm an amateur 5,000 different things, right? Like, I know amateur, like, it's a bad word these days or something, but, like, I'm an amateur lots of things. I'm an expert at specific things that I've spent my career doing, but I'm an amateur jewelry maker. I'm an amateur, writer. I'm an amateur all sorts of things, and I think that people who are professionals in the industry, who already have businesses in the industry, it's easy to think you don't need any more education. It's easy to think you don't need to supplement. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you know everything you need to know, and that's just not true.
It's not true. I second that. I think that technology is changing, materials are changing, even plants, the genus sometimes changes, and I'm like, "What? I thought that was a ligularia."
We spend a lot of time on taxonomy and plant nomenclature in my botany course, and we also touched on it on my indoor plants course. And in my business of selling plants course, we go into that from a business standpoint in terms of keeping up with that and proper labeling and things like that. And
Mhm.
it is so interesting how sort of unplugged most people in the industry are from actually understanding how all of that works or keeping up with it. When it, from my perspective, is a fundamental
Fundamental.
part of the language that of communications that we use to transmit our perception of value
Yes.
as an industry. It's
Well,
key.
I like to know it. Interesting to hear your take on this, but I like to know the genus and species and even variety if
Oh, absolutely.
if I'm doing the plans, but like somebody will ask me, a friend will say, "Well, oh, what's that plant?" And I'm like, "Well, that is one of the 100 varieties of heuchera." Like I don't know exactly which one, but I love heucheras, and like, but there's 300 varieties or
Right.
more, so I like to just casually drop in that, like, you know, I don't like using common names. I don't like using, and it seems like a thing in the
Trade
US.
trade names too are a problem. That's we spend a lot of time, especially in my business of selling plants course, talking about nomenclature in regards to trade names versus actual cultivar. There's all sorts of the business of that that's
Complexities.
very,
Yeah,
very confusing for people, but we as professionals in the industry need to understand the specifics of how all of that works because there is so much misinformation and bad nomenclature propagated and perpetuated online by reputable green industry businesses who should know better. And they're perpetuating the misinformation because it's on somebody else's website or it's on their grower's website. So they just take that information and they slap it on their website, and it's wrong. It's wrong, or it's incorrectly written. I
Yeah.
will tell you, all of my students will tell you, "Oh my god, don't even get her started." I am so picky about botanical nomenclature. So the first botany course I took as part of my degree, a million years ago, the instructor, it must have just burned on my brain the proper way that you have to write Latin names. And there's no exception to this. That is the rule. And it's just like that sort of just sunk in. And so I'm very particular because it matters.
Does matter because if it's I mean, if you call something and I can't even think of an example, you could probably do better than I can, but, like, this and that has almost the exact same name, and they are totally different genus and species. Like, they're not related, but you're making it sound like there's a common.
Well, I mean, obviously you can make mistakes. You can make mistakes like on a landscape design plan, or you can make mistakes in ordering. You can make mistakes making recommendations to customers. You can change the factual historical nomenclature of that plant online just by continually misrepresenting how it's written or the proper cultivar name. I mean, and so it propagates and perpetuates misinformation. So most of what I hear from the industry is, "Oh, I can't keep up with any of that. I don't mess with it. I don't even care." And I'm like, well, you guys are all just making a bigger and bigger mess. At some point, you have to care because botanical nomenclature and the rules thereof are our only common language we have
Yes,
to
from
communicate about plants with everybody globally, as well as provide accurate identification.
yes.
Does it take work? Does it take a little extra time? Yes. Is it part of our job as professionals in the industry? Yes.
Is it hard to say? Yes, but let's just get on with it.
But you know what? This is what I teach all of my students, is that botanical Latin is a written language, not a verbal language. It doesn't matter how
Oh,
you say it. Technically speaking, there is no proper way to pronounce any Latin plant name. There
good.
are common ways, there are preferred ways, but it's a written language. It's not a spoken language. It's not a verbal language of communication. Therefore, no one should ever feel embarrassed about saying a botanical Latin name wrong because it's never really wrong. And it's so funny. I will have people in the industry like correct my pronunciation. And I'm like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, I mean, I guess that makes you feel important, but that's ridiculous. It's a written language. And so I assuage that with all of my students. It's like, it's okay. Say however it comes out. And
Yeah.
then, you can adjust that pronunciation based on how all the other people around you happen to be saying it, just so they know what you're talking about. But it's a written language, not a verbal language. There you
Leslie,
go.
this has been so fun. I think, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Well, maybe
Did we hit the high points you wanted to hit today?
did. I
Okay.
mean, your course, and you've talked about the other courses around that course, but I feel pretty passionately that our business is very unique
Yes.
and we need to talk about it more. And so I love that, with the demand, you've developed this course and you're helping people along this route. I hope that we get the word out to some aspiring students of yours. And I think that, yeah, we need to have more podcasts to talk about all these other issues.
I love to talk horticulture in the industry, so happy to come back. Thanks for the opportunity to provide some exposure for the courses today. I'll send you the links to all of the courses if you want to provide those for
Great.
your listeners so that they know where they can read about it or register. And you can always hit up my website, lesliehalleck.com. It's got all the information there if you want to hub, and then you can find your way to the courses there as
Great. Great. We'll put all those links in the show notes
great.
and talk to you again soon, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me and look forward to the next time.
Awesome. Thank you.